Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. And it's not just Inside the Birds, it is season 7 of Inside the Birds. And it starts right now with everybody listening to this podcast. Inside the Birds, of course, is presented by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. Adam, 7 years. We've been through a
Wow.
lot. We've looked at each other through these Zoom screens so many times.
Yeah.
We're up to almost we're closing in on 1,000 Inside the Birds episodes, which we'll probably hit at some point during the Eagles season. Can you believe it? Season 7.
That's crazy. Yeah, we started in the spring, early summer of 2018. We were WIP for a season. People probably don't even know this, didn't know that. We had a show at the Fanatic for 2 years. We hope to be back with them this year. We'll see. We've had a lot of people working for us over the years, former players, of course, Greg Cosell, Andrew DeCecco now. Yeah, we've kind of evolved here. It's pretty cool. And yeah, we're kicking off training camp number 7 as well.
That's right. Eagles, will be our training camp preview. We'll go inside the big storylines for training camp coming up as the first practice will be Wednesday. It usually works. The players got to be in by sometime Monday. They take their fitness test on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, the madness begins. Wednesday is the first practice open to the media.
Yeah, so they actually report on Tuesday. You can't practice by NFL rules the same day you report. And then the first practice is Wednesday at 10 a.m. And they practice every day this summer when they're at home at 10 a.m. except for the practice at the link, which is I think 6:30. The only practice at the link, and then they have the one joint practice, which is in New England on August 13th. So we'll of course have some information for that one and how that goes. And interesting because Bill Belichick is no longer there. It's Gerard Mayo, who was drafted in 2007, I think, by Belichick. It's really quite the change there. But here you've got 2 new coordinators. We'll get into that. That's certainly part of the storylines. Then you came up with a great one, which we added, which the way you explained it was perfect. So we added that. We know it's out there on social media, but we're taking this to another level as we always do here. So we're looking forward to getting into the weeds, so to speak.
Yes, and as promised, you mentioned taking it to another level. As a promised in this podcast, we will reveal our long-awaited Patreon relaunch. We'll discuss the new tiers and the new bonus content that our fans will be able to get, and then we'll tell them when they can start to officially sign up. Also, you mentioned the joint practices, the training camp practices. Andrew DeCecco will be on hand for a lot of them for Inside the Birds as well. In fact, he's been previewing training camp for the last month on InsideTheBirds.com, has his 53-man roster projection that he does we do like 3 a year, all of it. We do one in the spring when things start to come together, and then we do one going into training camp, and then of course the final one on the final days of camp when they right before the final 53 is due. So make sure you check that out on InsideTheBirds.com. And like I said, later in the show, we will go through all the details of our new Patreon relaunch, which we're really excited to bring to everybody. There's going to be a ton. I mean, we've been working all off season on how to structure this thing and how to give people more for what they're paying for. So let's give them more content, and we're excited about announcing that launch.
Yeah, 2 things here. So on that, we took suggestions. We don't want to give it away yet, but with some of the suggestions, we were like, oh boy, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And a couple of things studying other podcasts out there, some big ones, not just NFL related or football related, some other sports and sports entertainment. We looked at everything that they're doing and what people like, and we took that into account for the Patreon tiers. And also we should mention with Andrew DeCecco, yeah, he's got this. I love this one, the All NovaCare team. That one is hilarious. It's funny. Obviously Henry Josie. We've mentioned him several times over the years, and
yes, Lorenzo Booker and
Lorenzo Booker, Nate Brown,
Michael Casperson,
right? In fact, somebody, I don't know if it's Casperson Something like that. We talked about a former player, like a low level player, your low end guy who never really made it.
Hmm.
I remember the guy favoring it on Twitter. It's funny. I'm
Oh,
like,
I think it was Brandon Pinderhughes. I think, I don't know, something
somebody
like
had,
that.
oh, wow. Interviews. But
Uh,
we love the obscure names because you never know, man. You never know who's going to make it. Nate Brown was my favorite one. In fact, nobody knew how to say his name because it's spelled N-A.
right.
And then there was the all-time one. Nothing will ever beat Hank Baskett. Nothing, because he was so incredible.
Mhm.
Circus catch over circus catch. Preseason was really good and uh, never became a player. But yeah, because sometimes it fools us. Like you see something, and then when it's actually the entire training camp and preseason, you go, "Oh wow, it's got to happen, right?" Well, that one didn't.
No, it did not. All right, so let's get into it. We got a lot of big storylines for this particular training camp. A lot of season of change, as we talked about. So let's go inside because we have been talking to some people. Just getting more information as training camp's about to begin. So we want to go really inside some of these storylines and give people exactly what they need to know and what to be looking for the next month and a half. And it obviously everything always begins with the quarterback and the offense and this new offense. And it's not crazy because it's the Eagles, but Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni and the offense, it's been dominating a lot of the headlines for bloggers and some of the news sites that need summer content about the relationship between the two and how much of the offense is really new and a lot of stuff is out there. We've addressed it all. The big thing, Adam, is this: a month. It's now that we talk about fewer practices, less time, I do think it's more difficult in this day and age for quarterbacks to learn new offenses, not learn it on paper, but to go and then see it out on the field because you're practicing less than you did 3, 5, 7, 10 years ago. And this will be a big challenge for Jalen Hurts learning a new offense, for the offensive coordinator Kellen Moore to learn Jalen Hurts and the whole staff, and then to be able to get on the same page. It's not just Jalen has to do this, right? Coaching is about understanding how your players are going to adapt to you along with you adapting to your players. So there's a lot to figure out here over the next 5, 6
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah. Yep, another new offense for Hurts. You go back to high school, you had Alabama offense, you had the Oklahoma offense, you had the Sirianni offense. Now you with Brian Johnson, now you have the Kellen Moore offense. And there might have been other ones in college. Like I don't know if he had more than one offense at Alabama, but the bottom line is Jalen's talked about it since he was drafted. He's been through a lot learning schemes. It is. It's now I know he said 95% difference from the old scheme. Some people might not agree with that, but the bottom line is it's definitely different. I mean, it's the route combinations are going to be different. The structure of the offense is going to be different. They'll keep some stuff like Jalen likes that Kellen Moore likes, but the bottom line is Kellen Moore's offense. There's no question about that. There's no debate. This is. And Sirianni knew this when last season ended. He wouldn't be able to run his offense anymore. He read the room, so to speak. He knew what was going on. He presented his plan. Jeffrey Lurie okayed it. Nick's back as head coach. Made the playoffs the first 3 years, but they got to get the quarterback number one back on track. See, the thing that we've learned in the last 2 or 3 weeks, getting more opinions from people we talked to around the league about this situation with Hurts, just about what happened from the tape last season. The thing that I didn't quite understand as much is apparently there are people could say, well, the defenses took, the RPOs away, the runs away, but there were plenty of throws he should have made he didn't make. Whereas the season before, he was so decisive
Yeah.
with a lot of the same reads, but you can't get into his head. You don't know why he didn't throw it. But that's the one thing I know about you. But I picked that up from like 2 or 3 people. They
Hmm.
seem to agree. A lot of times he didn't pull the trigger and he bailed move when he should move. That's got to be better, and that's on him. That's not a coaching issue. As much as we criticize some of the scheme last season, and they could have helped him, that is on the quarterback.
It's on the quarterback. Yeah. And it's on the quarterback, it's on the scheme. Obviously, I think things that were there for Jalen Hurts 2 years ago weren't there also because when you do something over and over and you do it well, as you see, defenses and teams spend their offseason trying to figure out how to neutralize that.
Yep.
And we saw teams do things differently to Jalen Hurts, defending him differently. It started pretty early. Um, and listen, it's not like he had a terrible year, but you're right. There were times where he could not make this. He wasn't making the same plays that he was the year before. What about the running element, Adam? We last year we discussed how whether it was that injury that he had in the middle of the year, that he was only on the injury report like for 1 week for, but you could tell he was something
He actually
different, right?
wasn't.
Oh,
He was
I thought
actually
for like 1 week he was. He was
not for
not
the
on the whole
knee.
year.
No, no, he was not for the knee. He might.
That's
I mean,
right.
definitely was not for the knee. I know that for. I checked into that because I was
Yeah.
stunned. Because we know, and he actually he confirmed it when the reporters were asking him, and he talked about, and I'm paraphrasing, so I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like, "quote You don't know what it's like to play with a bang up knee." He goes,
Right.
"That's a question you should be asking me." I thought that was awesome the way he said
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Kind of taken back by the way talk about. That's a veteran move right there. I thought that was great that he said it. He's like, "Hey guys,
Mhm.
you should be asking me about that." You
Yeah.
know what? So yeah,
And a veteran reporter could have said, "Well, how would we know to ask you about a knee when you're not on the injury report with a knee injury?"
no, but they saw, but they noticed that it was braced up. They noticed
Definitely.
you got to ask that question. But bottom line is that he wasn't the same quarterback. He was very inconsistent, and we were told it really started against New England, despite it being Belichick's defense and how tough it is to play against them. Believe it or not, there are plenty of throws that he should have made. We've asked people this. You can't get into a quarterback's head. You just, as coaches have told us, John DiFilippo told us, when a quarterback's not making throws, you just point it out. You have your talk, but you don't want to go heavy on the sideline. John, we asked John this in one of our live streams or our interviews with him recently. He said, you don't want to get deep in the weeds with this.
Right.
It's in the classroom. You don't want him thinking out there. You don't want to browbeat him. Okay, why didn't you make this throw? Because you have the tablet. You just go over the play and you might point something out. You don't ask a lot of questions. John said that there's a misnomer with the media. No, you don't get into it. It does you do when you're in the meeting room the next day when you watch the tape together. Okay, what were you thinking? We show it to you, but what was your thought process?
Mhm.
Is that what you want to flood the quarterback with a lot of thoughts? He's got enough to think about for the next series.
Yeah, I'm also wondering about if he's going to be healthy and the running element that was so prolific 2 years ago. Do they want read option, not RPO, not run pass option, right? Read option. Do they, which you can run read option off of an RPO, but for those who still get confused, run pass option is just mathematics. If the box is, showing one thing, you're gonna pull it out of the running back's belly and pass it. If your box showing you another set of numbers, you're just going to give it to the running back, let him run it. But you can also run it with the quarterback. If and again, a zone read is when the edge defender crashes at the mesh point and the quarterback decides to run around the edge most of the time. So I'm just wondering if they want that part of the offense, this entirely new offense, which we saw be a pretty prolific part of the offense 2 years ago. Do they want Jalen Hurts? Does he want to continue to run? Because he's taken a pretty significant amount of punishment over the last few years, and it's been an advantageous part of their offense, but he's also been banged up. So what are they deciding? What do they want to do, and what does Jalen want to do from that regard?
It's going to be in the offense. There will be runs. There'll be plenty of quarterback design runs, but the level, like how many of them is the question.
Right,
Is it going to be like 2 years ago? There's no way to know that.
right.
What makes him so dynamic is his feet, and he's very strong. He may not be super explosive running it, but man, he's instinctive. When he's right physically,
Hmm.
he sees it and he hits it. Like I remember early on, we remember the first 4 or 5 weeks, we're like, is he heavier? Is there something wrong with him?
Right.
He didn't look quite as explosive as he normally would be. I mean, he's not Michael Vick running the football that
Hmm.
fast, but for a guy who's stocky and built at 6'1" and whatever he's 220, 225, I mean, he moves fairly well. So we're interested in that. And then the other part of this is, we haven't talked much about this because he's going to be the backup. Getting Kenny Pickett in quarterback rehab. Get his mind right. Now, everything we put this out in our show months ago that he's in a good mindset. He's happy to be here. Feels like he's kind of been reborn, as someone close to him told us. So we'll see what it looks like. They got to get his mind right. Doug Nussmeier and the quarterback coach and Kellen Moore, they got to get him going. This is a big deal here. He's here. He's got this year and next year.
Right.
He's definitely going to be here. So they got to get him rated.
Now let's put the PSA out for the people right away, because I think we do this every year, right? In training camp, the defense is usually almost always ahead of the offense to start training camp. Offense, and it'll probably be more so this year with the offense all being new. remember, like the offensive linemen aren't in pads. The defensive linemen are coming at them like rabid dogs, and the offensive linemen can barely do anything to them. So the defense is always ahead of the offense for the first week or two, and then the offense sort of tries to get its revenge and settle out. So if you're seeing over the next like 5, 6, 7 days, oh my God, interception here, or the team couldn't move the ball, relax. That's how it is every year. There's a lot of weeks of this thing.
Although I would say 2 years ago, I don't know that to start off the offense was behind the defense. Hurts was so good in training camp. Everything was just so special. In fact, when I went to Cleveland, for the 2 days of practice in Berea, I mean, a former head coach who was traveling the country watching practice could not believe the talent level of the Eagles. The Eagles destroyed the Browns, absolutely destroyed them.
Yeah.
I think it was last summer, it was a little bit tighter where the Browns felt like they had an advantage over the Eagles a little bit. And that kind of showed later in the season that, the Eagles weren't as good. But yeah, just overall moving this forward, getting Pickett righted, as you said, the offense. And by the way, the offense was way behind the defense in OTAs. Now, I don't make too much of that stuff. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
Because they're just learning this new offense. This is their first exposure to it on the field. So now here's the other thing you mentioned. We'll take this to another level here. This is the first time. Think about it. The defense is way ahead of the offense in OTAs. Well, that was without any physical play. You couldn't touch the receivers. Here, you could touch them. You could jam them. You can't. There's no tackling. Eagles don't tackle, but you could push. You're going to see some of that. You're going to see physical play. I'm very interested to see what happens here with the physical play, and also we'll get to the offensive line later. But just the skill position players for the Eagles, the receivers, obviously Barkley now as an outlet in the pass game. Let's just see how this thing looks with Kellen Moore and getting Hurts back on track.
There you go. All right, so that's the quarterback. That's the offense. Let's get into the offensive line. We've talked about. Before we do that, we'll take a quick break to hear from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right, offensive line, obviously all eyes on two spots, center, right guard. Center is going to be Cam Jurgens. We know that. He's been the heir apparent. This is, the second year, and he finally gets to get in there. After so many heir apparents before him never made it, like Isaac Seumalo, and who else? There was another, Landon Dickerson. There was always a center, right, that was going to be the heir apparent to Jason Kelce, but he kept playing.
Well, Dickerson was never.
I know, but it's because he played. Remember, he did play some center in college.
Right, but he was never drafted. He was never drafted to be Kelce's guy. Now, Seumalo,
yes,
he was. Like their early thought process was, okay, he could be the guy. And then Isaac was not ready in 2017. He was not ready mentally. Just didn't have a lot of confidence. And one of our first scoops we put on our show in 2018, we had heard he made like this transformation, real confident. I don't know what happened. Yes. But the word was like, oh, he's turned this page, and we're like, all right, let's see. He sure as hell did. Great story. And in fact, talking to the Steelers, they felt he was their best lineman last season. So as you turn the page here, at center, it's Jurgens. There's no competition. He's the center. And the strangest of last summer was we never saw this coming. They never let Tyler Steen compete for the right guard job. Like, it was bizarre. Like, it was just they handed it to Jurgens which just tells you that they thought Steen was so far away from competing, they didn't even let him compete for it.
Right. I remember we went out of OTAs and getting close to camp, talking about, all right, Steen and Jurgens were going to have this good battle, and we'll see. And then as soon as we got to camp, it was Jurgens, and we had heard it was Jurgens by a mile, and you could see why. I mean, Steen got in there at right guard when Jurgens got hurt. Struggled a little bit, did some okay things, struggled a little bit. I imagine the Eagles are hoping, Adam, that the same transformation that Isaac Seumalo went through in that third year happens quicker for Tyler Steen, and he can come and seize the reins here in year two for him.
A couple things there. So the one thing with Steen was, when we put this out last spring, not this spring, but his rookie season, that do not give him the job because the technique was not good in their OTAs in 2023.
Mhm.
But again, to not even let him compete is just, that's not a good sign. Now I get it. It's a totally new position. It wasn't like, say, Milo had not played guard before. Isaac had also played left tackle in college, but most people probably don't know that, but he did. Um, but this is just completely different for Tyler Steen, and I get it. Like, okay, first year wasn't good. He had the one start, wasn't great. So now you move on. Now I think you could pencil him as a starter at right guard, but here's the
Mhm.
thing. On your scoop with Becton, like, I get it. He filled in for Dickerson for 3 days, but as Lane Johnson confirmed when he talked to the media, when the media couldn't, it was before that, when Becton was taking right guard snaps before the media knew about it, before they could watch practice in OTA. So just think about, like, if Becton does it, we'll see. We'll learn obviously we're going to learn Wednesday at the first practice. Where's Becton lining up? Now, if it's, if it's Tyler Steen and Hennessy or Steen and Sharping, then you know what? Unless somebody gets hurt, that was just a trial.
Mhm.
That was just an emergency thing. But if he's getting snaps at right guard, look out.
Yeah, well, first thing we have to see, honestly, is what weight does Becton come in at? How does he do in the conditioning test? I mean, I'm not trying to be silly or make a joke, but it's been, several weeks since they left for OTAs, and we have no idea. You have no idea how these players are going to look when they show up. We've seen guys fail tests in the past, or we've seen guys who look good in OTAs either come in underweight or overweight for camp. So we'll have to remember there was one year, wasn't it Mailata who? I mean, now he wound up losing it quickly, but he came in over what they wanted him at.
Well, he actually showed up to OTAs 2 or 3 years ago. Like, we were told it was over 400. And to his credit, like, he came to training camp, but it was either he was told to get to 375 or 380, I forget, which is comical. But he's 6'8", he's 6'8", and if anyone has seen Jordan, he could handle the weight. But the problem with him is because of the back problems that he had, pretty severe his first couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want him to have to deal with that. But I'm just fascinated to see how this looks, because you have two new starters on the interior. Jurgens goes from to right guard to center, and the hope is that Steen gets it. And look, this is sign off by Jeff Stoutland. This is his guy. And
Yep.
Stout, as we outlined when we were doing the review of the coaching staff, if you go over successes, he's kind of like 90%, man. He hasn't got much wrong.
Right.
So we'll see if it works.
How'd you handicap it? Because if you look, Tyler Steen sort of has the same pathway, right, that Jurgens had. Didn't really play much rookie year, so he had a whole year to sit and learn the Stoutland way. This is now year 2. He's got more comfort. He's had a year, whereas Becton is just starting to play this position for the first time and hasn't had a year. I feel like you'd have to handicap it at least going in.
Ready?
Heavily favored towards Tyler Steen.
All right, Tyler Steen. Here's I love this. Is awesome. I had no idea you were going to do this, but I'll go Tyler Steen minus 160.
I like it.
Becton plus 250. This is right guard only.
Yeah.
Becton plus 250.
Starting right guard. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus 250. He has to win it. Max Sharping plus 400.
Oh, I would put that at like plus 440. Maybe
worse. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And well, now you could say the field. You see sometimes on books, you could say, okay, Steen's minus 160 in the field, plus 200 or something.
That's a good one too. Yep.
And then your guy Darian Kennard plus 2,000.
That's probably fair.
He may not even get it.
Right guard. Yeah. You got to get into the thousands with that one.
Yeah.
All right. So that's how we see it. It'll be fun to watch. This is going to be one where Adam and I and Andrew, you're going to want you're going to want to listen to this podcast and get the intel, because it is not very easy for reporters, even good ones like Adam and I, who really pay attention to this stuff, to evaluate offensive linemen in the mix of a practice where there's 1,000 things going on.
It's funny you mentioned, offensive line evaluating this, and we want to do our best. So I'd asked a former Eagles personnel executive who's now with an AFC team, said, "Hey, could you help me learn like what to look for? I'm a layman, I don't know what you know." And he goes, "Always look at how awkward the offensive lineman is coming out of a stance. Is he smooth? Does he have, because you could tell the feet. How is he getting out of this awkward stance? How like, because you get your set if you're watching on YouTube, and then how does when he's got to move as soon as the snap, how awkward does he look? Mm-hmm. How smooth is he? Watch the footwork, because you could just see how smooth the guy is from an athletic standpoint. So that's something that I look at. But yeah, we'll look into our people and see how it's going there. But look, that's a big one. I mean, there's no question. You've got Kelsey, who's retired, he ain't coming back. He's got like 20 things he's doing, including television,
Yeah.
his podcast with his brother. So it's we'll see. And the other thing we'll look at as an adjunct to this is, we'll look into what are the backup jobs looking like? Because they've gotten very young with Dylan McMahon, Keegan. They've got a sort of like a veteran in Fred Johnson who's been around a while. We mentioned Becton. We'll see
Who's
what
the
Max.
guy that you really that we should watch for, the undrafted free agent from?
This kid. Yeah, Aneem
Aneem
Dankwa. So
Dankwa,
yeah, he's so long. One of the longest wingspans of any player at this year's combine. I know the Eagles want to take a nice look at him because there's a very good chance that the starters don't play in the preseason. Because what generally happens now, because of these joint practices, and plus teams are so conservative now. It wasn't like that when you and I first started covering the league. The starters would play a lot in the preseason. They usually, like the Eagles, that the starters almost certainly will practice a lot against the Patriots in that one joint practice. So they could look to that because it's against another team. But let's assume that Dankwa, who's got a lot of upside, I know he's raw and he's got a lot of development out of Howard, but you know what, man? These guys who are long, if you're patient with them, look, we look at Mailata now, right? Never played football in his life, was a 7th rounder, total flyer. Eagles were just hoping not only would he make the team, maybe it could be a good backup for them over time. They had no idea they'd be this good. You never know.
You never know.
You never know. So you throw it in there. So these backup jobs, look, there's going to be some competition. You got the veterans, and I mentioned Hennessy and the journeyman. Like I say, journeyman Brett Toth back and forth on the practice squad and with the Cardinals, and your guy Kennard and a couple other guys there. There's going to be some good
guy. I love that he's my guy.
Gary and Kennard.
We get intel, and then all of a sudden, guys become our guys. Like, yeah, your guy Dankwa, right, Adam? I know you're a big fan now because
it wasn't a guy I was thinking of, but someone tipped me off about the measurables, and you need to look into him because this guy's got something to develop. I'm like, you never, because it was like, and it never worked out. But Josh Sills, and he had the off the field thing, but Josh Sills was the guy who initially made the Eagles roster. When we did our initial 53, I had not had him on there, and then I put this out on Twitter like 2 hours before. I said, people know we literally never mentioned this guy all training camp. I heard nothing about this guy. I got a tip he was on the roster initially, and then obviously had the off the field issue. But I'm like, okay, well, we completely missed on him. But there's going to be somebody you don't know about or no one's talking about. Jason Post, who's small. I watched him at the OTAs. He is really small. Like he's short and stocky. He's built like Nick Cole. Remember Nick Cole?
I remember Nick Cole. Yeah,
the fire hydrant. Yeah.
Yep. He really was built like a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
5'10", about 410 pounds. No,
he was. I don't know what he weighed, but man, he was.
Big dude.
He lasted a while, right? He wasn't drafted, was he?
He was undrafted. I believe it was New Mexico State. You'll have to check me on that.
UTEP, one of the two, yeah.
Somewhere in there, that Southwest region. And the reason why I believe he lasted is because he could snap a football. He could play center. So right. Those guys tend to be able to stick around.
There you go.
All right, so that covers that. Let's move in onto the defensive side. Another big storyline. Inside linebacker. Hey, is that ever a storyline for the Eagles going into camp?
Every year.
Linebacker.
Every year.
Have we talked about this before?
Yeah. But you're right. New Mexico State for Nicole. All right. So,
bam.
Good one. So, look, you got Bobby King, who's a veteran coach. The Eagles finally got it right with their defensive staff in terms of getting guys who've been there and done that. This is really important because you've got Zach Bond, who's never played inside backer before. We were lucky enough to run into someone who's with another NFC team, and I was playing golf with this guy last week who said he was giving Zach Bond the off the ball inside backers. Didn't matter whether they're 34 front, 5'2", whatever the case, or 4'3". This guy was giving the inside backers. He goes, Zach Bond, you can go back to Wisconsin. He's never played inside backer in his life. He's this guy didn't know that they're going to line up inside. He goes, I don't see it, but he goes, this guy doesn't know Fangio. He goes, listen, he goes, we like guys from an inside backer standpoint could rush. He goes, those guys are really hard to find. I said, you know, they have Devin White. He goes, well, that's not a guy I would be very high, I would recommend. And, you know, well, that's another, another talk for another time. This guy was not very high on him, Devin White, based on his free agent tape. But you take White who can blitz. You got Vaughn, who's a former pass rusher. Who knows? But I mean, this Bobby King has got a big job on his hands.
Absolutely.
You know, so you got Trot Jr., who Greg Cosell spoke very highly of, by the way, in our show that we did with Greg, 2 weeks ago?
I was trying.
Wow.
See, I was trying to evaluate. So Greg's exact words were, I liked Jeremiah Trotter's tape coming out of college more than Nakobe Dean's.
Yeah.
But if you remember, Greg wasn't like the biggest Nakobe Dean guy
Right.
either. So I wasn't sure if that was his way of saying I'm just not that big of a Dean guy or I'm a really big Trotter guy. Either way, I think you can interpret it for what it is. He likes Jeremiah Trotter more than Nakobe Dean, but he also knows Trotter was a day 3 draft pick.
Well, the thing that scouts loved about, and personnel people in general loved about Trot Jr., he's so instinctive, but he's so small.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing that you worry about. Not a great athlete, but he's just a sort of like, obviously he's not, his dad is, you know, thick, physical, incredible football player for the Eagles for many years, but Trot Jr. is just a smaller guy, under 230, but so smart and knows where to go, but he's just not, he's smaller, not a great athlete. So the question is now, what could happen? I don't rule anything out, but if you look at the contracts for Vaughn and White, I mean, they're the highest paid linebackers in the team. You know, they're making the team. The question is, you know, are they going to start? Now, right now, we've got Dean coming back. He's just got to stay in the field. We don't know what he is. He hadn't played. He's barely played. He's played on mostly special teams because he's been hurt. And then Burks is the guy that's played some good football. He's been mostly a backup, but has some starts in his career as well. Van Sumer played great against the Giants in his one start. I think this is a little bit better competition you think, where a lot of us are putting a pen where Devin White should be the Mike linebacker. I'm not so sure yet. Let's just let the competition play out before we say anyone's going to be starting.
Yeah, like sometimes we look at contracts, right, and we say the answer's in there. I mean, I think if you're reading the tea leaves of the contracts, you would think the Eagles want Devin White and Nakobe Dean because he's a 3rd round pick to start. Now they might find situational usage in this scenario I'm building for Zach Baun as an inside linebacker. I'm not saying that means that they don't want Zach Baun to impress them and be it, but I just think ideally it makes more sense to have Nakobe Dean and Devin White. But like you said, if we were handicapping this one, it ain't like Steen versus the field or Steen versus Becton. You're probably seeing a lot of, you know, this guy might be I don't know. Everybody might be in the plus. You know what I'm saying? Like plus 210 on one, plus 250 on the other.
I'm going to go Devin White as a starter, whether it's the Mike or the Will. The Eagles will start 2 inside backers. They won't play 3. The other 2 guys are edges. They're not linebackers. They're on the ball, stand up edge rushers in this front. That's how they create their 5-man front. But Devin White as a starting inside backer, I would go minus 140. He's going to make just under $5 million this season. 3.5 million of it's fully guaranteed at signing. Yeah, the guarantee is interesting. Devin White and Zach Baun both got 3.5 million fully guaranteed at signing. But Devin White will make more money based on his base salary. And Baun, all of his cash is fully guaranteed, where not all of White's is. But on your point, you're right. I mean, based on the contracts usually tell you the story, but they got to win it, man. They got to win it. Devin White was, look, it's not a good sign that his former team didn't want him back. They didn't offer him a contract to come back. Right. That's not good.
Right. So White, I would put Dean sort of minus 120, and I would put Baun at plus 225.
All right. So how about, all right. So, okay. So right now you would have on your odds, you would have White and Dean starting
as the favorites to start, Baun as the dark horse.
Okay, so in that scenario, almost certainly Dean would be the Mike and White would be the Will. That's the way I would see that.
Yes.
And then Burks could be the backup Mike. Baun's got to show it. I mean, I know he kind of opened some eyes on OTAs, but that was OTAs. I mean, that doesn't mean all that much. But they can be physical here. Thud drill, man. Elbow. Can't take him to the ground, but little shoulder. Elbow. I wish to love that when a lot of teams don't take players to the ground. They just get physical.
Right. We'll see what happens. So the second thing is not just jockeying for starting jobs, but very interested to see the confines and the construct of the defense, of the linebacker job in this defense for Vic Fangio. Is he going to blitz these guys, drop some edge rushers? Are we going to see some sim pressures right away? Is there one of these guys that he really wants to see blitzing from an inside linebacker's position over another? You know, do they do well when they're asked to drop into zones and you know, third down, you're match carrying, deliver? You know, you're the, in this case, you are being delivered to usually when you're the linebacker, because those crossing routes are coming over the middle and the corners are directing the receivers toward the linebackers. So are the linebackers good? Are they rangy? Are they doing what they're being asked to do? I mean, some of this is similar to what Desai and Gannon were doing, but it's, as we say all the time, it ain't Desai, it ain't Gannon, it is Vic Fangio.
Right. And the other thing is, and we'll talk about this more going forward as we do each training camp show, but they have to, all the players, because the defensive staff is almost completely new. Not everyone is new, but mostly the staff is new. They got to learn. It's on what you're saying. We'll extend it a little bit. They got to learn techniques. They got to learn how they want things done. Just because this is what you're saying, in another way, you could say it is that, okay, this is the way Desai, those college coaches that were hired by the Eagles last year to be on the defensive staff, they taught it one way. This is going to be different. This is just the real Fangio's here, the way he wants things done. And Clint Hurt, by the way, is defensive line coach, the way he wants things done. Because Clinton and Vic worked together for 2 seasons with the Bears, and they know each other pretty well. So it's just going to be different. I'm looking forward to that. I just, there's so much unknown because the staff has just changed, and you got the real Fangio here. So I've not seen him. Have I seen him coach before? I don't think, no, I don't think I've been to any camp where he's been coaching. Maybe I have, but I can't remember. So I don't even know what, I've heard him talk before, but I don't know how, does he get mad? Does he get yell? I have no idea. You know?
Yeah. Look, to me, Adam, like it comes down to, I mean, the Eagles survived for a while on either substandard linebacker play, or 2 years ago, they got really good linebacker play that you wouldn't have expected. But, you know, last year, you really saw what happens when you don't have the right pieces, and against the best teams, the 49ers, teams that have weapons, the Chiefs, right? Like they can isolate their running back. We saw McCaffrey get isolated on Nick Morrow, and it was embarrassing. We saw 4 strong concepts that just tore apart the Eagles' middle defense in their zone. If the Eagles are going to get to a Super Bowl or win play, we're talking about the Niners. We're talking about the Lions who have Jahmyr Gibbs. We're talking about teams that have weapons at the running back position or the interior receiver position, like the way Juwan Jennings tore him up too. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, interior receiver. They're going to have to defend the middle of the field way better this year, and this is where it all starts, in learning what you got at that inside linebacker spot.
All right, so let's. I'm gonna, because you just mentioned it. I had not even thought of this. Okay.
Oh, Packers, Josh Jacobs, by the way, he can catch the ball pretty well. So.
Yeah. Well, okay, and it's going to be a lot better than Arthur Smith coaching. Trust us, folks.
Yeah.
A real Zach Robinson, who's a disciple of Sean McVay. Watch Bijan Robinson this season. Okay. Back to back. I know Calvin Kamara's not the same back anymore, but Derek Carr's captain check down. He's risk averse. Kamara had a big season catching the football. We just mentioned Bijan Robinson. Then it's kind of weird. They play 3 straight games against the NFC South.
That's right.
I know that Rachaad White's not explosive, but he catches the ball a lot. Okay.
Well, it's week 2, right? That they play the Falcons, don't they?
Yep.
Kirk Cousins, week 2. Oh, every year, right? Or is it week 3? I'm sorry. Is it week 3?
So it goes.
Week
Yeah.
2.
You know, it's Cousins week 2.
Yeah.
Week 3, Kamara, Rachaad White. I'm just looking at the receiving backs.
So they'll face him.
Travis Etienne, who
Good one.
They need to use him out of the backfield more. Austin Eckler will be the backup. He'll be the passing down back for the Commandos, so they'll face him twice.
Yeah.
I'm just looking here. Anyone else of note?
Wow. So they get Jacobs and they get Bijan back to back, week 1, week 2. That's all right. So hey, like I said, it starts in training camp. This is going to be a big test for the Eagles.
Good point. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that. I had not thought of that. That's a big thing with these inside backers, and they have to get physical. This is the thing, man, and this is why it's so important. You have guys who, assistant coaches who've been there and done that, like Clint Hurt, like Bobby, what's his name again?
Bobby King.
Bobby King, thank you. Yeah, Bobby King. It's been around a long time. It's so important because they have great command. I talked to someone who's worked with Bobby King with the Titans. Speak very highly of him. He's got real good command.
Good.
So looking forward, and it's good that they got a veteran one. I know he's new to the position. Devin White, okay, he's a veteran, but he's got to play with more discipline. Burks is a really smart guy, well-traveled guy. And Nakobe Dean's a high character guy. I'm expecting this room to be better and just more athletic, but got to play with better discipline.
All right, good stuff. Let's stay on defense for our next storyline. It'll probably be, if not the biggest storyline of camp, and that's how they develop their cornerback position, figure out their combinations. They have 2 young corners that they drafted very high in Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. They've got Isaiah Rodgers, who, they took a flyer on and they're expecting some things there. They drafted Keely Ringo in the 4th round, got him on the field a little bit at the end of last year. Don't forget about Josh Jobs, Eli Ring. I mean, there's a lot of names here. There's a lot of names. There's a lot of expectations. It's got to be better. I didn't even mention James Bradbury because at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to be on the team, but he's here in training camp. We'll see. I think it'll be pretty interesting right away to see where they have James Bradbury.
Yeah, because is he going to be at safety? Sirianni basically said he's going to be. Boy, it's they owe him a lot of money. I mean, I'm looking at Bradbury's that option bonus. Yeah, just under 12 million. It's hard to walk away from that. I'm not saying they won't. I mean,
Sunken cost.
Yeah, exactly. It has nothing to do with the cap number. It's cap doesn't matter. It's the cash.
Right.
It's a lot of cash to walk away from, just under 12 million. But you know what? Didn't work. The very odd story, the regression. I do wonder Christian Parker, the new DB's coach, and they've got Joe Casper, who's the safeties coach. And I know Vic's very high on Joe Casper, so I'm wondering if these guys could get anything out of James Bradbury. You never really know. Is he just completely toast? Was it the coaching? Was it a combination of it? We're going to learn very quickly. But as you said, at corner, they now again, depth is about not numbers; it's about actual performance.
Mm-hmm.
But on paper, particularly the nickel position, they've got 4 or 5 guys who can play, and it's definitely better. There's no question about that.
Yep.
Now we have to see the other storyline here is where's Cooper DeJean going to line up? Parker said that they're going to pick one position for training camp. We know there are a lot of people in the league that don't think DeJean is a corner long term. So he'd be better as a nickel defender, match up a big nickel defender as a safety because he's so athletic and he's got good size and he's fluid, but doesn't have great cornerback skill. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's weird. DeJean's versatility and the fact that he might project at different spots has almost made him more of an interesting storyline for some than Quinyon Mitchell. But I'm kind of more on Quinyon Mitchell. Like I'm fascinated by him. None of us thought he would be there at, what was it, 22? I don't even remember where the Eagles picked anymore. 22?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. He's a kid who is not your typical corner. Like he doesn't come off as very showy or he's a no nonsense guy, almost James Bradbury-ish in that regard. Seemingly very confident though. And I can't imagine he's going into camp thinking I got to earn my he knows he has to, but I'm sure he goes into camp thinking he's the best player for that position because you can see he's a very confident kid, and I'm excited to see how that plays out.
The only thing is, and I know that they're going to play as far as zone defense, they're going to be in probably bottom 5 man. It's a high percentage zone defense. Okay, it's very predictable, but it's the post snap disguise and all the drops and the zone drops you'll see the edge rushers drop. It's going to happen, folks. And the real Fangio defense, which is with Vic, they drop. They either rush or they drop. That's what they don't just stand there. So one of the 2 things are going to happen here. So we're gonna learn a lot. But with Mitchell, the only thing with him that you get concerned about is at some point they're going to have to play man coverage. He only did it at the Senior Bowl, and as Howie Roseman said, the Eagles GM and other people, clubs were convinced he could play man because he was so smooth doing it.
Yes, long, athletic too.
And our buddy from the Senior Bowl that Jim Nagy told us, all the feedback that he got from clubs where they were convinced after seeing him do it. And Jim, it was good that Jim had him do it. But that's a storyline. You're right. The Quinyon Mitchell, is he going to start week 1? Obviously, if he's ready, he's starting. There's no debate. He's starting. Like, that's, you don't draft the guy not to play to start, but he's got to be ready. And Vic and Christian Parker, they have to make that decision. Obviously, by probably third week. Although, quite frankly, if it looks really good early on, we're probably going to know. You could see it with corners. You could see how smooth they are. You were just talking about it. But the one thing I would caution folks, he played way off. Like the tape, we were told he's pretty. We had a great source on this who told us, he goes, dudes, this is what it looked like. This guy really likes Mitchell because he's so smooth, and he loves the character of him. The fact that he didn't transfer when he could have, and he could have got more NIL money, but he didn't do it, shows a lot of character. But he goes, if we're being honest here, he played so far off, though he closes really well. But he goes, hey, this is going to be a little bit of adjustment for him, and he'll get that in training camp.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that Senior Bowl up, because what I've learned throughout the years from the Senior Bowl, when guys are asked to play positions or techniques that they haven't done before and do it and then show that they can, it shows that they have the tools in the toolbox to do these things, but they haven't built anything with those tools yet. So, I mean, Quinyon Mitchell may have shown that he has the capability and the tools to play press man coverage of the Senior Bowl, but who he's press man coveraging against guys who mostly got drafted in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Like, there weren't a whole lot of 1st and 2nd round wide receivers, if I recall, at the Senior Bowl. And if there were, like, Ladd McConkey was there, so maybe there's one, but it's not like every single rep came against Ladd McConkey. So the point I'm making is, yes, you have the tools in the toolbox to do it, but all of a sudden in a game on a Friday night, you're up against, a guy like the Packers, Reed, who's already played a year, or you might, the next night be going up against Justin Jefferson. That's a whole lot different, right? So you've got to like, the Senior Bowl just shows that you have the abilities and the potential to do things. You really have to have that. Then you have to start to build your foundation. You're not there yet just because you've done it at the Senior Bowl.
Exactly right. It's only 3 days of practice, right? Yeah. But you do like, though, whoever the best receivers are. Apparently, what we were told is whoever the best receivers were there, he went up against, he did very well. So that gives at least.
Yeah, Roman Wilson was one of them. He had really good battles with him. Ladd McConkey was another. I think those were the highest.
By the way, McConkey was absolutely awesome.
He's a really good route runner.
Oof.
I think he's actually going to have, not to get off too much subject, but I have a feeling Ladd McConkey is going to put up some pretty good rookie numbers in that offense with the Chargers and Harbaugh, because he's really he's got to start, right? I mean,
who else is going to catch the ball there?
Exactly. Yeah, high volume target. Yeah, I have a feeling he's going to do well.
Good for fantasy, maybe. But so cornerback, man, this is. I don't remember what our thought was going into training camp last year, but I didn't realize there's so many intriguing storylines here, way more than I anticipated.
Yeah, well, we didn't know that James Bradbury was really going to fall off the face of the earth the way he did. I mean, we thought going into training camp that they were going to be all right because it was going to be Bradbury and Slay.
Well, no, what our issue was the depth.
Yes, because Greedy Williams was a guy that they were counting on to be a veteran depth, and he didn't even. Wasn't he among the first cuts of training camp?
He was cut well before the initial 53. In fact, he never signed with another team. In fact, he probably had 1 or 2 workouts. I don't remember, but he never latched on. He hasn't retired, but no one's heard from him. This is one of those weird stories. He was supposed to be their 3rd corner. I mean, that was crazy. That was one of your best calls in the history of our show when we did our initial 53. When did we do it? Like June or July or something?
Yes. Yeah. I didn't see numerically how it would work out if other players were going to make it. So
I don't know where you came up with that. That was an unbelievable call. Like, that's like top 5 all time.
I've had some good ones. Nothing like the time I had that guy on the 53 who wasn't even on the team yet. The safety from the Browns cut who went to Iowa State. I can't even remember his name.
I remember the story. Yeah. Very good.
But here's the thing I'm thinking on corner though.
Yep.
A lot of different guys. Isaiah Rodgers is there, Keely Ringo. You have just so many different levels of players. So it would not surprise me if you're seeing different combinations there. It's going to be hard to get a read early in camp on this because I think you're going to see different combinations of guys in and out. We saw that last year at linebacker, which we'll talk about a little more. You remember, like, there were different first team linebackers literally every other day, and we're like, whoa, what's going on here? We have no idea.
Well, no, because they weren't sure, and then and we'll get into this. We have a really cool idea that you came up with, just in terms of the roster, but they didn't know what they had because they knew who Dean was. They didn't know he'd get hurt, but
Mhm.
they didn't know because you brought in two veterans off the street who we saw at the game at the link, or the practice at the link. They were just there because they
Mhm.
just signed because it was so bad. They just they didn't know what they had. So
Right.
um, I just like that they have a veteran staff here, that because this would, if you brought, because they have so many new players, this would not be good if you're bringing in like 3 or 4 college coaches who've never worked with these guys and not worked in the NFL before. That you don't want a lot of change when with young or guys who've not been here before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And by the way, I can joke about this now because it's irrelevant, but last year one of our first training camp pods, which was only like 2 days, there were only like 2 practices. So we didn't have a whole lot and we weren't trying to make too much. But I remember saying we had gotten some intel and I had heard that the LSU kid was doing well. So I remember saying on the pod, all right, Greedy Williams. I mean, he's here to do well. And it sounds like he's off to a good start. I had forgot there was another LSU kid who was the undrafted. What was his name? Mekhi Garner. So I
Yes,
was
he's still there.
mistaking. I was
Yeah.
mistaking the LSU kid.
Oh,
It was
oh.
Garner who was actually performing well, not Greedy Williams. But
Yes, yes, yes. And Greedy Williams was a guy, height, weight, speed. You loved all of it. Could never stay healthy. Browns didn't want him back.
Right.
Now you see why. I mean, it's just boy. Just imagine though if it would have worked out with him,
Oh, yeah. That would have been
because
nice.
he never could quite put it together. Wow, that was he a second round pick for them?
I thought it's either a second or a third.
It's just not good.
Yeah, one of the few LSU defensive backs who did not pan out. So usually they do pan out.
Yes.
All right. We will move on, but that is our corner. We'll get into some more storylines in a second. Obviously, a big storyline, Adam, this summer is not just going to be the Eagles, but obviously the Philadelphia Phillies, as they are racing toward the postseason and clinching the National League. And a little struggles against Pittsburgh, but they're fine. Okay, they're going to be fine. They'll probably make a great trade at the deadline. You're going to want to go watch the Phillies at the bank where they always win. And if you're going to go, you're going to want to use the Game Time app to get your tickets. They are the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. That means getting tickets faster and easier. And as we tell you all the time, the prices actually go down on the Game Time app the closer it gets to the first pitch. They have so many deals. They've got their zone deals, their flash deals, and of course the app. I love using it to see the view from your seat because not only do they show you the picture out of it, like, if you adjust your phone, the picture adjusts too. It's almost like a 3-dimensional thing where you get to see all angles of the view from your seat right from the app. You get the lowest price guaranteed. So whether you want to go to more Phillies games, home games this summer, or, Eagles season coming up, you can certainly get your Eagles tickets to the Game Time app as well. And there'll be some awesome home games this year to see the Eagles. You got to use the Game Time app. Again, easy as 1, 2, 3. MLB tickets, NFL tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, but also for concerts, comedy, theater, etc. If there's something that you can buy a ticket for, Penn State football also for me, right? Game Time app has got it. Game Time credits you 110% of the difference if you find a better price. That's their lowest price guarantee, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And if you do it, make sure you go on social media and say, hey, I got tickets through the Game Time app. Tag them, tag Inside the Birds. We'll retweet it. We'll make a big deal of it. We always like when people do that. All right. Back to the podcast. And as promised, our Patreon relaunch. We are announcing right now all that will come with our Patreon relaunch. Okay. So the relaunch itself is going to be available August 1st. So as soon as it's August 1st, you can go to patreon.com/InsideTheBirds and sign up for any one of our tiers. It's 3 tiers now. We went from 1 tier to 3. All right. Tier 1 is the same tier. It's an $8 tier. You get your bonus Chalk Talk podcast. You get your weekly Discord chat where you do the Ask ITB live stream that we've been doing twice a month, and any early intel that we get, we put it on Discord. We put contract info up on the Patreon channel. All that is still tier 1 for $8. Tier 2, I feel like there should be a drum roll here. Boom, 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 boom. Tier 2, our new tier, is a $12 tier. You're going to get everything I just mentioned in tier 1, but, and this is a major, major announcement, we are going to post every podcast that we do immediately on the Patreon channel, whether we record it the night before, 2 nights before, whatever it is, it gets posted immediately and without ads. So all Inside the Birds pods will be posted to the Patreon channel as soon as they're done, and there will be no advertisements, nothing to skip. You're just listening to Inside the Birds. And Adam, the cool thing is, it's not just the Inside the Birds pod, it's any podcast on our Inside the Birds platform. It could be Q&A, it could be the Intel with Greg Cosell, could be something Andrew DeCecco is doing. It's all going to go up first on the Patreon platform with 0 ads.
Correct. Now on YouTube, we don't control that. So if you have their premium service, you could also listen without commercials. We won't put any on there, but I know with YouTube, it could get annoying sometimes because they have their own pop-ups.
Right.
But anyway, with us on our pod, you're getting it. It's super cool because we looked into we looked into what are the things that people wanted. No commercials, done.
There you go.
They want it up quickly because we learned this. If you remember, I think you and Clay Harbor were doing a show, or I think like 2 years ago or something, or a year ago, and we put it on like a Wednesday night at like midnight or 11 o'clock.
This was from the Super Bowl, I think, from Radio Row. We just put it up, podcasted it early, or with no.
Whatever it was, the traffic was absurd. I go, did we learn something, man? People, because we look at the West Coast listeners, and then we've got people overseas,
right?
So yeah, there's no question. The number one requested thing is people don't want commercials. We got you. We hear you, and we're taking care of it.
There you go. All right. One last thing with tier 2. Again, $12. $12. Only $4 more. You're getting ad-free pods posted immediately. Everything in tier 1. Plus, every month we are going to do an Ask an Eagle live stream where we bring on a former Eagle player, coach, general manager, somebody associated with the Eagles to join us on the live stream. And people who are part of the live stream will get to ask questions themselves. Adam and I have hosted a lot. We're now putting it in your hands, the Patreon members' hands, where you can say, let's say we have Jason Avant on. Let's say we have Brian Westbrook on. Let's say we have Joe Banner on. You guys get to ask the questions yourselves. You'll be in the chat room with us, and you'll get your answers personally, or your questions personally answered. All that in tier 2. I'm really excited about that. I think people are going to love it. And let me tell you, if that sounds good, let's just go through tier 3, the final tier here. $15. Tier 3, you get everything we just mentioned in tier 1, everything in tier 2, the ad-free pods, the Ask an Eagle live stream every month, but also you will get a weekly, during the season, Ask Greg Cosell live stream, where Greg will come on and answer your questions. Ab and I ask Greg questions. Now you guys get to ask Greg Cosell questions. He will answer them personally in the live stream.
And I could tell you, he's way more candid with us than any interview in the country. He doesn't do a lot of Eagle stuff outside what he does with us. In fact, very little. But when he is so candid, I could tell you when you folks have seen him, on our shows. He's a truth teller, and the people who listened to Greg with us, the people who didn't like Greg at first, who would criticize him, take shots at him, now they love him because they get it. He has nothing personal against the players or coaches. It's what the tape tells him. And now you get him exclusively with us, and you're going to be able to ask him whatever you want. Please, I can't wait to see this because it's going to be funny. Because what's going to happen is, and it could be, let's say the Eagles win 50-0. Okay, Greg, what was great? But if it's not going well, you get to ask them what anything you want. And I get it. I know it's coming. I mean, they're not going to be great every week. So it's going to be funny and interesting, and can't wait for this.
All right. So that is tier 3, $15. You get the bonus podcast, a weekly Discord chat, a weekly Ask ITB live stream, not just twice monthly. For $15 tier 3 members, you get a weekly Ask ITB live stream, the early intel, the ad-free pods, the weekly Ask an Eagle live stream. I'm sorry, monthly Ask an Eagle live stream, weekly Ask Greg Cosell live stream during the NFL season, and then anything else that develops. We're gonna try to do some roundtables with Quentin, Michael, Jason Avant, like a little Q&A ITB crossover. That would be for tier 3. Any potential, anything we think of that, hey, we'd like to do this, we'll add that to tier 3, like we did this past year. And also we'll have, if you submit questions to us, we'll answer them in the podcast personally here. So that's part of tier 3 as well. And anything, we're working to get Andrew DeCecco involved as well. He may make some appearances. All that will be tier 3 for $15. Very excited, very thankful for all of our members. It's been a growing community. If you're not involved, you're really missing out on great extra bonus content. And I do want to remind our listeners here on the pod, the Inside the Birds pod, that are not Patreon members, we will be announcing content for the NFL, the Eagles season, probably sometime later in August or going into the season. We are still going to do content for the mainstream platform like we've done in the past. That stuff's not going away. We're just continuing to add, and we're working through details on that as we go.
You can really appreciate everyone's patience and patronage, as they say. And it helps us. By the way, the money doesn't go to us. It goes to the talent we hire, and it goes to keeping our company going. I mean, that's really
we are a business, so it does come to us a little bit. But
yeah, well, someday I hope it does. No, but in honesty, it really it goes back to the company to keep us going strong, and that's what we do with it. Because I always wondered with Patreon, I subscribe to a couple, the wrestling podcast, 83 Weeks, which is phenomenal if you're an old school wrestling fan like me. Look, they have 1,000 shows. I mean, you got to pay the talent, you got to pay people, so it helps. I get it. I want to learn about what they were doing. It's phenomenal. Eric Bischoff and Conrad Thompson are just absolutely phenomenal. If you've never heard it, they have their own Patreon, and it's they do a great job. They really do. And anyway, so moving on here. Yeah, that's we got that out of the way. But also, we want to welcome new member Joseph, who just joined us. Watch us Wednesday night live stream at 8 Eastern. We got a lot of stuff we're going to load in that show. I told Geoff a couple things I came across the last couple of weeks, so we're going to do that. And also, John D. Flip was going to join us this week. John is going to help us learn about how a coach puts together an offensive coordinator, because John's been one in a bunch of places, and a quarterback's coach. Plans for each day, what he looks for, making corrections, installs, what to expect. Like you mentioned earlier, the defense is usually ahead of the offenses early on. How do you get things going? When do you know it looks good? How to handle these short practices? How to handle these joint practices? All that stuff and more with John later this week.
There you go. All right, looking forward to that, and of course the live stream Wednesday night that we always do, and we're ready to go, full steam ahead. All right, speaking of going full steam ahead, we get back to some major storylines. I'm really excited to talk about this one because, man, wide receiver, Adam, it's such a, I don't want to say, it's such a top heavy position for the Eagles. Two unquestioned stars in AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. And the biggest question I have in who's going to be the number 3 receiver, who's going to play the slot. When I say number 3, I mean the top inside receiver. That's always viewed through, well, who's a reliable pass catcher, or who can stretch the field vertically if you want a vertical slot. But again, for a team that wants to run the ball out of 11 personnel, and with Saquon Barkley here, you're thinking they're going to want to run the ball out of 11 personnel. Who is going to be able to play that inside receiver position and have the blocking acumen to be able to make sure these running plays are well blocked up?
Well, right now it's Paris Campbell with a pencil. I mean, there's really, Anaya Smith is a rookie. I know he's built pretty well for a guy. He put some weight on for the combine. I think it might have been like 190 or something at the combine. But Paris Campbell, I mean, barring something foreseen, will be that guy. Now, he won't be every snap in the slot. I mean, he can back up the outside positions. But the issue that you have is, where's this guy in his career? I know he's not like he's old. He just turned 27 recently, but he was benched for performance. As we reported at the time, it was not game specific. It was practice, didn't perform. And this is not a team. The Giants last year were very good at receiver.
Yeah, I was going to say the Eagles are banking on a guy who couldn't get on the field for the Giants. I mean, that's tough.
That's not good. He's a pretty high character guy, from what we understand. He just didn't perform, but they needed to perform. They don't. Johnny Wilson's not a slot receiver. I mean, you could line him up as a inside if you want, but he's not a slot receiver. He's not a possession receiver like that. Jacob Harris is sort of a hybrid player. John Ross is an outside player. Britton Covey is a slot only, but he has barely played on offense. Shaquan Davis and Austin Watkins will come to camp. Watkins is a guy I know the Eagles like a lot, and they want to see him develop as a backup receiver, but he's got to prove it. They just don't have any experience behind the two starters on the outside, and Campbell's their only experienced backup. So this is wide open, and we'll get to a little bit of more thoughts on the roster and kind of what they might do before we get out of here. But bottom line is, man, there's going to be competition in training camp. The slot position is very important in this offense. I'm fascinated to see what happens here. And can Paris Campbell just stay on the field and perform?
So we talked about corner, maybe the biggest storyline going into this camp with all the names and sort of the uncertainty. But
yeah,
number 3 wide receiver in a passing league and for an organization that puts so much emphasis on being explosive and having weapons, this is a huge, huge question mark or just uncertainty headed into the camp,
One more thing I'd add. Is Joseph Ngata going to be the top backup at AJ Brown? Is Paris Campbell going to be that guy? Like we don't know yet. Now, could John Ross be Smith's backup as the Z, as a move receiver? Maybe. I don't know that he's played a lot of X, so I don't know. We know he could run. He still could run.
Right.
But he's had so many injuries before. He temporarily retired. So we don't know, and we're all rooting for him. It's a cool story that his comeback here, but they got a lot of questions, man. And it's to the point where I think the first week of training camp will decide when they sign a veteran receiver. At some point, they're going to have to add another one. It doesn't have to be now. It could be right before the season starts, but at some point, they're going to have to add one. But the first week of training camp is going to tell them a lot.
All right. The next thing we're going to talk about, next storyline, and you presented to me, is it a stat or a fact?
It's a fact.
I guess it's a fact
Yeah.
that blew my mind, even though I knew it, but just when hearing it, it is mind-blowing given the organization that we're talking about. Please present the fact.
So, we've talked all off season that the Eagles don't have a veteran. They don't have a vested veteran in back of they don't have a vested veteran at all at defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Williams is not vested. He's in his 4th year. Davis is not. Carter's not. Tuipulotu is in his 4th year, but he's not vested. Mustafer's not. Ojomo's not. Gabe Hall, Thomas Booker. So they're the only NFL team to not have a vested veteran at defensive tackle on the roster. The 31 other teams, I looked into it. I was just curious. They're the only team to do this. They're kind of like receiver. They could wait. You can see if Ojomo could break out. Tuipulotu has had some injuries. Could be dependable, but man, it's nice to be young. It's one thing if they had like a 2nd round pick who's going to be their top backup. You go, you know what? They don't need to do anything right now.
Right.
But they've got a bunch of unproven guys that have really done nothing. I know in nickel you could stick Brandon Graham in there and inside, but he's not a defensive tackle. True defensive tackles, they don't have a vested veteran. That's a big gamble here. They're the only NFL team right now. In fact, one team signed a journeyman, Carl Davis, who didn't have one, and then they signed him. So that eliminated that team from our discussion. That one team has a vested veteran now because they're the only team not to have a vested veteran at defensive tackle.
So it doesn't surprise me that a team in the NFL doesn't have a vested vet at that position, because I think it was you who brought to my attention that the Packers last year did not have a vested vet at wide receiver, which is
worked out.
And it worked out for them. It surprises me that it's the Eagles who just go out of their way to make sure. Last year, they kept 7 defensive tackles just to make sure Contavious Street was still there and their young guy, right? That it shocks me that the Eagles are the team that does not have a vested veteran at that position, that they have years, decades, had stockpiled veterans at that position just to have on the roster. That is very surprising. So really interesting stat, and that makes the conversation, we already have the conversation about how this is a very, 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 very big year for Jordan Davis, and how Jalen Carter now also has to show he's not a rotational player. He's a starter, and he's got to be dominant from front to start. And can Milton Williams also handle playing even more playing time? Also, those are already part of the conversation that we've had for quite a while. And now the depth that we've talked about really just underscored there with the fact that they don't have a single veteran. Moro Ojomo, we've talked about him, not a veteran, enters year 2. He's a guy to watch. So it'll be interesting to see where they get him in the equation. And sort of, do any of these DTs outside of Jalen Carter fit into the 4-man rush in any of the lines that Vic Fangio is going to use for his 4-man rush? I don't know.
Well, because we don't, Fangio's familiar with a lot of these players because of his when he was here in 22. Some of the guys who are still here, 22, but Fletch is not, of course. So, and then you mentioned Kentavious Street, who was traded during if the season started when Atlanta lost Grady Jarrett. So it's kind of questionable that they're another position they can't afford one injury, because you're putting. Now I know Tui Pelotu 2 years ago was doing really well before he got hurt, and he really hasn't done much since then. But again, he hasn't played a lot of football here. So, and this so-called 5-man front, you start 3 defensive tackles. That's been pretty much the norm here since when Gannon was here. That's what they did. So you would assume, can't say 100%, but you assume they're going to go with the same front. So it's a 3 DTs, it's 2 edges who are on the ball.
Overhangs.
Away we go.
I like how you call it a so-called 5-man front. You almost say that with some snide, like it's not a 5-man. This so-called 5-man front.
One of our best personal sources with another team laughs. He goes, yeah, if you look at Pittsburgh's 34, they're an old school 34 because the 2 edges are back.
Right.
They're not on the ball like Phillies are, or other teams that do it or run Fangio. And of course, the real Fangio is here because he just doesn't call it that. He goes, I guess it depends which media people you speak with. I go, I don't know who you speak with, man. I go, I hear you. He goes, we just don't talk like that. But he goes,
right.
I get it. He goes, I guess maybe other people in the league you speak to say that. And I go, yeah, I mean, it's a 5-man front because the edges are on the ball. I mean, they're literally standing up, like breathing on the offensive linemen. So, but their hands aren't down, so you can't call them a defensive end.
Right. So funny.
I know.
It's almost like the so-called big nickel. Guess what? It's really dime because there's 6 defensive backs, 3 corners, 3 safeties. All right. You're calling it big nickel, but in the reality is it's a dime, just a bigger looking dime. So they call it big nickel. There's still 6 defensive backs on the field when you go big nickel that way.
I'm trying to figure out who was the first team. I mean, maybe 3 safety alignments have been in the league for 50 years, but I want to know who came up coined the term big nickel.
Big nickel.
I'm curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that. We'll have to look into that.
It's just usually if you were going to be in dime, it was always going to be corners. Like you're just throwing another slot corner on the field. So you have 2 slot corners, 2 outside corners, 2 safeties, right? And now people are using, because safeties have become more athletic, they'll use a safety over a corner as that second interior defensive back, and it makes it 3 safeties.
Well, it depends how you do it. You could go 4-2-5, and then you have.
Would be technically nickel then, I guess.
Right,
yes.
right. But then some teams might go 3 safeties, 2 corners. I mean, just I guess.
Yes, like a Tyrann Mathieu could play in a 4-2-5. He could play he'd be your nickel back, and technically he's a safety, but he's playing in nickel back position. So I get that. That to me is maybe more big nickel than what it's become now. But whatever. Yeah. So the whole idea of depth at defensive tackle parlays well into our last topic. And it's a bigger overarching one that we talked about, Adam, right? It's how much patience will Howie Roseman have, especially coming off last year, losing 6 out of 7, with areas that lack depth right now. That would be wide receiver. We just talked about number 3 wide receiver, defensive tackle. There's bodies at inside linebacker, but it's not necessarily great depth. And then I'll throw safety in there as a 4th.
So
to set this up, Howie was not very patient in a good way at linebacker last year. As soon as Nakobe Dean basically stubbed his toe, had an ankle injury, he signs 2 guys, 2 veterans right off the bat. And they weren't just signings for bodies, right? He signed Zach Cunningham to come in here and start because he had already seen Zach Morrow for a little bit. He had seen Nakobe Dean. He had seen Ben Van Sumer, and he knew he needed to make a move.
Right. So the question would be, and maybe it could be the first week or second week. So they signed Cunningham and Miles Jack at the same time. They both were at that evening practice, so they walked right by me because we were allowed on the field for that evening practice. And who knew that Miles Jack would wind up retiring and then coming out of retirement playing for Pittsburgh? That was bizarre.
Yes.
That told you the state of their inside backer group. Nick Morrow, who was cut, so they didn't fully guarantee his base salary. Then they brought him back. after the regular season started. So that's and here's another one for, we didn't talk about this, I just thought of this. Is Nolan Smith just an edge rusher? Because we know they've lined him up at inside before. So that's another intriguing part of this. Now they don't need to because they have so many guys. But what if it doesn't work out with these guys? Because it's it's possible Devin White can't play. You know he's healthy.
Yeah.
But
what if he gets hurt? What if he gets hurt and you need body? Like, do they put Nolan Smith there? You know, I mean, they've got more depth with Oren Burks now and Vince Marin, but you know, if you think Nolan Smith can be impactful from that spot, then you might put him there.
Well, they're very light on edge rushers, so Nolan Smith was drafted to be an edge rusher. This is another wrinkle to this, but on your point, you've got the inside backer group that's got to perform. The issue, the youth, the backups have very little experience at receiver. They got to figure out the slot position, who's going to back up the Z and the X positions, or as Sirianni calls them, the outside positions. He doesn't like to call them with letters because he thinks they're somewhat interchangeable. At D tackle, when do they make that decision where they're going to sign a veteran? Do they just wait for Linval Joseph to come out of retirement? I'm joking. But boy, Linval's a big dude. He did help though. Man, their run defense improved as soon as they got him. It's crazy.
Right.
Then on your point earlier that you made about Jordan Davis, Jordan Davis is struggling in training camp in the heat. This is the hottest, being from the area. I could tell you this is that I could remember. It's the hottest summer of my lifetime so far. If he's struggling, and you mentioned earlier, we'll see what his weight is. We'll look into it. If any of them are struggling, they're going to have to do something pretty early.
100%. All right, we'll wrap this up in 1 second. We just want to pause to hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. And if not, you can always visit them at SkyMotorCars.com and check out their great selection of automobiles right there on the website. Last thing I want to say, Adam, is one of the things that to observe that, and we'll be looking in is sort of coaching styles. You have two new coordinators who have succeeded in other places and have full reign over their sides of the ball. And one in particular comes with a little bit of a reputation now. I don't know, some players were complaining about Vic and being a stickler, I guess, in Miami, but we always like to see the command, the presence that they have. We study these things when we get to the camp practices. Is what they're saying? How is it being received? What is the relationship going to be like right or early on with Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts when they're on the field? And the same thing with Vic Fangio and some of his young defensive players like Jalen Carter that we just mentioned. Some of these guys that he's going to be, Quinyon Mitchell, that he's going to ride pretty hard because they're young and he's Vic Fangio. That's a part of that, not just the coordinators, but also the position coaches and how they assert their presence on the field. Always a big storyline.
Well, and then one more.
One more. What's got?
The new kickoff role, Michael Clay and his group.
Good point.
This is a major issue. Like, in fact, folks, I can't believe I'm saying this because I usually only watch preseason for fantasy around the league. I usually don't watch a lot of it. But this kickoff role is so impactful it's really dual returners. The kickoff coverage teams can't get the running start anymore. It's the league thinks it's going to double the amount of returns easily the first year. Could be more than that, but they think at a minimum, based on the meeting that I had with them at the ownership meetings when the media was had a demonstration by the competition committee. So this is a big deal here. And Isaiah Rodgers, by the way, could be impactful. Like there's so many storylines. And a great point you made about the coaching staff. It's okay. What's Kevin Patullo going to be doing now? We're going to look into that because he's Sirianni's guy. He still has the title of assistant head coach and pass game coordinator. Jamal Singleton now with Saquon Barkley. Could he get Saquon to the next level? In this scheme, you've got this. We mentioned Bobby King, Joe Casper, Roy Anderson on defense.
Mm-hmm.
There's Ronell Williams is a new position now. He's moving around here. Christian Parker now. This is Bobby King. Like this is so much change, so many questions. I don't think there are a lot of negatives. It's just there's a lot of mystery, which I think is a good thing.
I agree. The NFL 5 years ago, let's get rid of the kickoff returns because of player safety. The NFL now, hey, let's double the amount of kickoff returns. But I know the new format is supposed to be a safer format. I just think it's very funny that 5 years later.
Yeah,
they're
it's
trying to
because
double
of
it.
but it's because of the lack of the running start.
Right.
That's where the collisions happen.
Oh, what could go wrong, Adam?
What's that?
what could go wrong? It's foolproof.
I watched the USFL 2 years ago. The UFL, I can't remember if they were using it or not, but I did watch it, and it's so weird looking. I couldn't, like, when they were giving us this demonstration at the owners meetings, I'm like, man, this thing is different. I mean, this is I didn't really. I remember seeing it 2 years ago. I thought it was weird, but this is crazy. I mean, I wish they would adopt those rules that the UFL has, though. Before we get out of here, the extra point, it's 1 point from the from the 3-yard line. It's 2 points from the 5, 3 points from the 10. Boy, that adds such a special element. But that's
that is cool. I do like that part.
Yep.
All right. The next time you hear from us will be Thursday. There'll be one training camp practice in the book. So we will do our best to not over exaggerate, get some intel, talk a little bit more about what to expect in the next coming 3 or 4 weeks, and just get excited. Get everybody excited. Season 7 here. First podcast of season 7 in the books. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.